Yo, yo, yo. What's up? A little bit tonight it's a Saturday night. It's kind of late. Just a little bit on the cultural. There's just such a strong cultural um, there's like cultural pressure against any alternative worldviews that go against the power structures. And what I mean by that is, there's just a lot of pressure, from mainstream, like whether it be movies, TV, anything mainstream that comes out in the mainstream. So like anything on TV, anything in movies, like mainstream movies, um, anything in the education system, um, the national government education system. Um, any of that, there's just, especially, you see it especially in like TV and movies, but there's like a ridiculization of anyone who steps out, and tries to change, or kind of challenge the mainstream's worldview, and a lot of it has to do with like conspiracy theory. They've coined that term, conspiracy theorists. Whenever you say there's collusion or there's monopolistic activity or there's some type of anything that you can clearly see, it's like a conspiracy theory. And we know that there's a lot of things that go on within power, and that's known throughout history, that power corrupts absolutely. That is just how it is. And so we know that's how it is, but what power always wants to do is convince everyone that they're the good guy, to remain in power, obviously, because no one likes an evil, government or, someone. So they're always creating the illusion of they're the good guys, fighting against the bad guys. And, it's just such a lie, and the issue of violence is always prevalent. Anything against violence is absolutely ridiculed, shunned, because violence is the only way they can sustain the system, the power, is through violence. That's their main weapon of control. And if we don't buy into using violence, and it's institutional violence, why is institutional violence different from any other type of violence? So violence in today's society is shunned. It's like looked down on from the mainstream, right? But institutional violence is not. Institutional violence is actually, it's looked upon in a great light, like, armies and police force and any type of violence that comes from a government, or from some type of large institution. So institutional violence is always justified, and it's always rationalized. And that's our big challenge, is changing that perspective, that violence is violence, and violence is forcing things, and violence is just the wrong way. There's no institutional violence or gang violence or domestic violence, or it's all just violence. And so, but there's so much pressure from the mainstream, and so we really have to stand firm in our beliefs. And we're not going against the mainstream, you know. We're not here to lift up a violent revolution or anything like that. Quite the opposite, you know. We want to obviously we're going to speak against violence and the ways of violence, and you know, the consequences of violence, and educate people towards the right path. But you know, we're treating everyone, we're trying to bring everyone to the light. We're not going to use darkness against darkness. And that's the main principle, you know. And so, like, they really have nothing to be afraid of from us. I mean, they kind of do, because you know, I think it's the only threat that they really face. Because violent threats, they already have that under control because they have the bigger gun. And the bigger gun always wins, you know. But guns can't do anything in the face of love, compassion. They're powerless. And so, but and the same thing goes. This is the first time I brought this up in this series, but with the whole topic of like animals as well. So, you know, killing of animals for us to eat, right? I mean, is it okay to kill cows, to kill chickens, to kill animals for us to feed? And in at this point in our evolution, there's a resounding no, because there's so many alternatives. We know that we're not dependent upon meat. We don't need meat to live a healthy life. Quite the opposite, I mean. But we definitely don't need it. It's not something that we need to live a healthy, you know, life. And so why take life? You know, here we go once again with the violence, you know, the issue of violence. And, you know, vegans are also made fun of a lot, you know. But, you know, it's the same thing. It's the same issue of violence. And what we're talking about is just expanding our consciousness to include, because everyone's consciousness of love is usually with the people they love most, you know, with their family, their kids. Everyone's consciousness is already has compassion, has love for the people they most love, but we're just expanding that consciousness towards, you know, not only the people you care for, but people you don't care for, people outside of your religion, people outside of your culture, people outside of your belief systems, people who hate you, people who, you know, expanding that consciousness. And then also not only to human beings, but towards other sentient beings. And then even to nature. But especially sentient beings, you know, cows, chickens. We all know that you look into their eyes and they're beings just like us, you know. They suffer just like us. They have their own purposes. They have everything. And to take life unnecessarily is just, it's just not the right way, you know. And I know it's hard in today's society, especially being a vegan, just the way, you know, just there's just nothing out there, but it's changing. And that's awesome, you know. There is a lot of consciousness, and people are changing. And not only for spiritual reasons, but for, you know, health reasons. And so um, it all just comes down to this, to the just same basic principles, of good and evil. And so let's be the light. I know it's hard for everyone, but let's take these moments daily to reflect, to pray, to look inside yourself and just try and be that light, to create that light that's inside of you already, blocking out everything else, letting everything go, shutting up that ego and just being that light. So, hasta mañana.